13,000 feet up in the Bolivian Andes, on a wind-scoured plain where the air is too thin for trees, there is a field of broken stone. Not rough-hewn boulders, blocks with flat faces, sharp inside corners, perfect right angles. Surfaces so smooth and level that a modern engineer running a hand across them reaches for the word machined. And the people who carved them had no iron, no steel, no written language, and, as far as anyone can prove, no wheel. The site is called Puma Punku. It is part of a larger ancient city called Tiwanaku, and it has become the single most argued over ruin in the entire ancient mysteries world. One side says skilled Andean stoneworkers, given enough time and enough hands, could shape stone this precisely. The other side looks at the blocks, the drilled holes, the machine-flat planes, the interchangeable parts, and says no tool these people are known to have owned could possibly have done this. So the question at Puma Punku is brutally simple. Either we are underestimating ancient hands, or something is missing from the story. Start with where this is. Puma Punku sits on the Altiplano, the high plateau of the Andes, near the southern shore of Lake Titicaca in modern Bolivia. The elevation is just under 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet. Up here, the air holds far less oxygen. The sun is fierce, the nights are freezing, and almost nothing grows tall. It is, by any measure, a punishing place to build a city. And yet, someone built a great one. The city is Tiwanaku. At its height, it was one of the most important centers in the ancient Americas. The heart of a civilization that dominated the southern Andes for centuries. Most archaeologists date the rise of Tiwanaku as a major power to roughly 1,500 years ago, with the city flourishing through the first millennium of the Common Era, before declining around 1,000 years ago. At its peak, tens of thousands of people may have lived in and around it. Temples, pyramids, sunken courts, a sophisticated society in the thin Andean air. But Puma Punku, one specific structure within Tiwanaku, is different. It was a great terraced platform, a temple complex now almost entirely collapsed. Today it looks like a bomb went off. Enormous stone blocks flung and scattered, tumbled across the ground, cracked and toppled. But before it fell, Puma Punku was assembled from precisely cut stone. And it is the precision of those individual blocks that has launched 10,000 arguments. Let's set the timeline carefully. Because at Puma Punku, the timeline is contested ground. The mainstream archaeological dating, based on radiocarbon samples from the site, places the construction of Puma Punku at roughly 1,500 years ago, in the era when Tiwanaku rose to power. That is the consensus. That is what the carbon dates support. And for most archaeologists, that is the end of it. But here is where it gets contentious. Some researchers, and not only fringe ones, have argued the core of the site could be far older. They point out that radiocarbon dates from organic material tell you when the campfire burned or when the body was buried, not necessarily when the stone was cut. Older, more controversial estimates have tried to push parts of Puma Punku back thousands of years, even in the most extreme claims to a time before the end of the Ice Age. The mainstream firmly rejects those early dates. But the very fact that the argument exists tells you how strange the stonework is. Set the dating fight aside for a moment, and the harder problem remains. Because whether Puma Punku was built 1,500 years ago or far earlier, the builders are the same kind of problem. The Tiwanaku civilization had no system of writing that has ever been deciphered. They had no iron and no steel. Their hardest metals were copper, bronze, and gold, all of them softer than the stone they were carving. There is no evidence they used the wheel for transport or for work, and they were doing this at 13,000 feet, in air that leaves a modern visitor gasping. Let's go and stand among the blocks. Because you cannot understand the Puma Punku argument until you look closely at what is actually lying on that ground. Start with the most famous stones of all, the H blocks. The H blocks are stones cut into an elaborate repeating shape, like a capital letter H, but far more complex, with stepped recesses and precise interior angles. And here is the detail that stuns engineers. The H blocks are nearly identical to one another. Multiple blocks cut to the same complex design, to the same dimensions, with the same internal angles, as if they were standardized, interchangeable, mass-produced, the way a factory turns out identical parts. Some researchers believe the blocks were templated, cut against a master pattern so they would fit together like components of a single great machine. Then there are the surfaces. Many of the Puma Punku blocks have faces that are remarkably flat. Flat enough that observers describe them as planar, level, true. The interior corners where two cut faces meet are sharp, not rounded, not chamfered by wear, but crisp. And there are fine details, small, regular drilled holes, long, straight, precisely cut grooves running across stone faces, some with a row of evenly spaced drill holes set into them. Cuts so clean and so regular that the human eye, looking at them, insists a machine was here. And here is where the ancient aliens crowd leans in close. And honestly, standing in front of these blocks, I understand it completely. Because the intuition is powerful and immediate. You look at a flat plane, a sharp inside corner, a row of identical drill holes, and your brain says, tools, power tools, precision machining. The fringe takes that intuition all the way. Lost high technology, or knowledge handed down from non-human visitors? The mainstream answer is different, and we are going to take it seriously. But nobody should pretend the intuition is stupid. These stones earn the question. So now we have to be fair. Because there is a strong, careful, evidence-based case that human hands, Andean hands, without iron or machines, cut every block at Puma Punku. And that case deserves the same attention as the mystery. Start with the stone itself. The Puma Punku blocks are cut mainly from two kinds of rock: a red sandstone and a hard volcanic stone called andesite. Experimental archaeology has shown a great deal. Hard hammerstones, cobbles of an even harder rock, can be used to peck and shape stone surprisingly precisely. Flat faces can be ground down using sand and water as an abrasive, rubbed patiently until the surface is genuinely level. Drill holes can be bored with a hollow reed or a bone spun against the stone, fed with abrasive sand. It is slow, but it works. And then there is the strongest single piece of evidence for human construction. At Puma Punku and across Tiwanaku, some blocks were held together with metal cramps. Small clamps poured into precisely cut eye-shaped sockets in the stone, locking neighboring blocks together. And studies of those cramps found something revealing. In some cases, the molten metal appears to have been poured directly into the stone sockets on site, meaning the builders had real, sophisticated metalworking skill. This was not a people stumbling in the dark. This was a civilization with deep, specialized craft knowledge. The precision is a measure of their mastery, not proof of someone else's. Let's grant the mainstream case. Let's say human hands cut every block. The mystery does not disappear. It just changes shape. Because even if you accept that Andean stoneworkers had the skill, you are still left with the logistics. And the logistics are staggering. Consider the largest stones. The biggest blocks at Puma Punku weigh well over 100 tons. One enormous slab is estimated at around 130 tons. And the stone they are made of did not occur where they sit. The sandstone came from a quarry kilometers away. The harder andesite came from even further. Some sources lie across difficult terrain, possibly the far side of the lake. So picture the problem. You must quarry a 100-ton block, move it many kilometers across a high, broken plateau without wheels, without draft animals strong enough, without iron, and then place it with precision. How did they move them? The mainstream toolkit is what we have seen before: ropes, wooden rollers or sledges, earthen ramps, and above all, organized human muscle, on a massive scale. We know that Tiwanaku State could command labor. We know it could feed and organize thousands of people. So the moving of the stones, while extraordinary, is not magic. It is organization. But, and this matters, there is no surviving Tiwanaku manual, no carved depiction that shows us exactly how. We are reconstructing the method from what is physically possible, not from a record the builders left. And the placing is harder than the moving. It is one thing to drag a 100-ton block across a plain. It is another to set it down within a hair of where it must go, so that its precisely cut faces align with the blocks around it, so the eye-shaped sockets line up, so the whole interlocking design actually fits together. That requires not just muscle, but planning, surveying, measuring. A shared design held in many minds at once. Puma Punku was not just carved, it was engineered. Now we come to a different mystery. Not how it was built, but how it was destroyed. Because Puma Punku today is not a ruin that simply fell down with age. It looks violently broken. Blocks weighing many tons lie flipped over, tossed, cracked clean through, scattered like a child's blocks kicked across a floor. So what did that? There are several theories, and the honest position is that they may all be partly true. Theory 1, earthquakes. The Andes are seismically violent, and a major earthquake could topple and crack megalithic walls. Some researchers go further, suggesting that ground saturated with water could liquefy in a quake, letting massive blocks sink, tilt, and shift. Theory 2, simple human salvage. For centuries after Tiwanaku fell, later peoples and much later colonial builders hauled away cut stone for their own construction, dismantling the site, block by block. And then there is the fringe theory, the one that haunts the internet. Some have looked at the violence of the destruction, the flipped and shattered megaliths, and proposed a sudden cataclysm, a great flood, a tremendous deluge sweeping across the Altiplano, powerful enough to fling 100-ton stones like driftwood. Mainstream geology does not support a flood of that scale at that time. But notice something. The fringe and the mainstream actually agree on the core fact. They agree that something sudden and violent happened here. They only disagree on what. And here is the cruel part. The destruction of Puma Punku did not just topple a temple. It destroyed the evidence. A standing, intact Puma Punku might have answered our questions. The way the blocks fit, the full design, the tool marks in their original context. But a shattered, scattered, partly looted Puma Punku gives us only fragments. We are trying to reconstruct the most precise stonework of the ancient Americas from a puzzle that has been kicked apart, had pieces stolen, and left face down in the dirt for 1,000 years. Before we close, let me take you a short walk away from the broken blocks to the single most famous object in all of Tiwanaku. It is called the Gate of the Sun, a monumental doorway carved from a single enormous block of stone. And across the top of it runs a band of intricate relief carving, a central figure, often identified as a sky or sun deity, flanked by rows of smaller winged figures, and beneath them, a complex frieze of repeating symbols. For more than a century, researchers have argued that this carved band is not just decoration. Some believe it encodes a calendar. The idea is that the rows of symbols track units of time, days, months, the cycle of the agricultural year. If that reading is right, then the Gate of the Sun is an astronomical and calendrical instrument carved in stone, which tells us that Tiwanaku people were precise observers of the sky, exactly as you would expect of a civilization that aligned its temples to the sun. The calendar reading is debated, but here is what is not debated. The people who carved this gate had a deep, organized understanding of time, of astronomy, and of stone. The same understanding that raised Puma Punku. Here is what I keep coming back to. Puma Punku forces a choice, and it is an uncomfortable one. Either we accept that ancient human beings with stone hammers and sand and water and rope and overwhelming patience could produce work that looks machined to a modern engineer's eye, which means we have badly underestimated them. Or we go looking for a missing ingredient, a lost technology, a vanished people, a teacher from elsewhere. And almost everything we know points to the first answer. And that first answer is the one this channel keeps arriving at. The further back we look, the more we find that ancient hands were not crude. They were skilled beyond what we comfortably imagine. The people of Tiwanaku did not have our machines, but they had time, organization, generational knowledge, and a mastery of stone so complete that 1,000 years later, we stand in front of their broken blocks and reach instinctively for the word impossible. Puma Punku is not proof of aliens. It is something better and stranger. It is proof that the gap between a Stone Age craftsman and a modern engineer is not a gap of intelligence. It is only a gap of tools. Before history, high in the thin Andean air, human beings cut stone as if they were cutting metal. And then their temple was shattered and scattered and half buried. And we are still, right now, kneeling in the dirt, trying to put it back together. If this episode shifted something in your head about how skilled ancient hands really were, about how easily we underestimate the deep past, then know that Puma Punku is only one impossible-looking ruin among many. The fitted walls of the Andes, the precision stonework of Egypt, the megalithic mysteries scattered across every continent, an entire inheritance of ancient engineering, still argued over, still only half understood. If you want to come along as we test what was possible, subscribe to Before History, because the further back we look, the more skilled and the more astonishing our ancestors turn out to have been. See you in the next one.